I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh. It's amazing.
Join co-hosts Jamie Rocci and Teresa Kenny as they educate women about the beauty of the feminine design and empower women to take charge of their health.
They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius. I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Hormone Genius Podcast. I'm here, of course, with my wonderful co-host, Teresa Kenny, and we also are welcoming Risa to our podcast. And Risa, I should have asked you, how do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, it's Groux. Nobody gets it right, so don't feel bad. Risa Groux, yes.
Risa Groux. Okay. So Risa Groux is a functional nutritionist and a certified autoimmune coach in private practice in Newport Beach, California. She's always been passionate about nutrition and good health. Risa was so concerned about purity that she even made her children's baby food from scratch. Today, she is passionate about cooking and creating healthy, nutritious food. She works with a wide array of clients, from professional athletes, adults, and kids to the biggest loser from season 4. Risa works with issues like diabetes, autoimmune disease, cancer, digestion, thyroid, and hormone imbalances, just to name a few. She firmly believes that the body can heal itself with whole foods we obtain from the earth, and sees living proof of that in her office each day. I am so excited, Risa, to welcome you to our show. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, Risa. Okay, well, we're all dying to know. So how did you get here? Like, what about your story makes you so passionate about health as medicine? I'd love to kind of just start digging in there.
You know, it really started at a young age. When I grew up, I always noticed my mom was always trying to lose 5 or 10 pounds, just always on a diet. And the foods were fattening and foods were good and foods were bad. And I was wondering, why do the bad foods taste so good? And, you know, why is it that we have these categories of food? Right. And sometimes we do it, and why would we eat bad food? And, you know, there were a lot of mixed messages. And my grandmother was always on a diet. And then she would, you know, say every year she'd go to the fat farm, which I later found out was the spa. But there was just this obsession around food with women in my family. Right. So I was always sort of on a diet, and I just had this horrible relationship with food. It was either deprivation or the gate was open. Right. So I became very conscious of that just innately, and realized that food is actually our fuel, right? It's what we need to eat, and we have to make good decisions about feeding ourselves so that we thrive and survive. And then I grew as an adult, and I got married, and I conceived my first child with no problem. And then we started trying for the second one, and we just couldn't conceive. And we just had all this trouble conceiving. And then once we did, I had a few miscarriages. So it was super frustrating. And so I sort of did this deep dive. I ended up going to a fertility doctor who tested my blood and said, "Oh, you have an underachieving thyroid. Here's a script." And I said, "Well, what's this?" He said, "You know, you just take this pill every day." And I go, "Well, for how long?" And he goes, "Every day." And I said, No. For how long do I take this pill?" And he said, "For the rest of your life." And I thought, why would I take a pill, a synthetic medication, for something that my body should be producing, right? I was born to produce this. Why am I not producing? And why is nobody asking why I'm not producing it? So that really sparked it for me. And I became pregnant, not just from that, but I did acupuncture and cleaned up my diet and all these other things, and realized I had a gene mutation called MTHFR, which is super common. I test everybody for it. You guys know. And, you know, a side effect of that is infertility and miscarriages. So took the proper B vitamin and off you go. So a couple years after I had my second child, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease when you attack your thyroid gland. And then I really stepped into gear and said, yeah, no, I'm not going to go down this road. Why is this happening? Is my body in a state of attack? So that is really, and I was sort of concurrent while I was going back to school and becoming a clinical nutritionist. And then I ended up in functional medicine. And I am very happy to report that I have just recently, after many years of efforts in every aspect, I have reversed my Hashimoto's. So very happy. Yes.
That's awesome, Risa. And I think already like our group of listeners are really going to resonate with this story because, we in our world of hormones and fertility and miscarriage, and especially even repeat miscarriage, unfortunately is not an uncommon phenomenon.
Right.
And the other thing that's not uncommon is thyroid issues. And what frustrates me as a practitioner is, I'll sometimes see a woman who's been diagnosed with hypothyroidism for, 20 years, but no one ever has tested their thyroid antibodies. Exactly. So they have no idea that there is this underlying kind of inflammation going on or underlying autoimmunity that is literally the cause of their thyroid issue. And that there's other things that they could do to really help their body heal. So these are two things that I know that people are just going to be like, man, that's what I deal with. So now they're going to be like, great, she has some answers for how to heal from this, or she kind of has a story of how she was able to find things out. And so they'll be excited to hear that too.
Yeah, it's unfortunately our allopathic conventional medicine does not, that paradigm does not look deep enough and thorough enough. And the typical patient comes into my office with previous labs with the TSH is tested, and that's it. Maybe we'll get a T4. If we're lucky, we get a T3, but there's no antibodies. There's no reverse. There's no T3 uptake, which is really it's all about the hormones affecting your thyroid function. So, in your endocrine system, it's incredibly important that they all work together. And the thyroid is such an important gland because it has so much function with the rest of the body. So it's really important to take a deep dive. That's why I test every single solitary person I work with for 9 markers on the thyroid.
Let's walk through that actually. So for people who may be listening for the first time, a few things you're probably wondering in your mind are, what is MTHFR? What is that gene? And how does the thyroid function high level? Let's just kind of start there so that they have that context. And then again, we can kind of, keep asking questions and digging in more into the nutrition side.
Yeah. So the answer for the MTHFR, it's a gene mutation that's super common. I test every single person for it. It's rare. I found one this week that somebody didn't have it. I'm like, wow, that's so unusual. So yeah, the statistics are 50 to 90%, but I would venture to say 95% of the population has it. At least the population that comes into my office, I have it. Both my kids have it. And what it means is it's a methylation process of your B12 and or your folate, your B9. And so it's 100% genetic. So you either got it from mom or dad or both. And everybody has different alleles. So like your mom could have given you a SNP from from B12 and your dad maybe from folate, or you could have double folate and no B12. So there's different combinations that you can have. And what it essentially means is that we can't process or methylize our B12 and or our folate, which can lead to certain things. So the symptoms of MTHFR are ADD, ADHD, autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, headaches, migraines, depression, anxiety, miscarriages, and infertility. So, and those are sort of, there's some that can be several things, but it's something, if you have those, then I would look into it. And in my case, I didn't have any of those except for when I was trying to conceive. So, and some people don't show many symptoms, but I can usually see it on a blood panel because the MCV, the size of the red blood cell tends to get enlarged a bit. Not dangerous, but just not usually too high levels. And then we typically see the homocysteine, an inflammatory marker that elevates, which can be very serious if it gets too high for too long. It can lead to cardiovascular disease and macular degeneration and dementia. Dementia is a big one. So it's important to make sure that you test and that you take the right B vitamin. It just means you can't get it from food. So you need to supplement with the proper, not folic acid. Folic acid is a synthetic. It's It's going to gum up your system. It can cause more problems than not taking anything at all. So you need those vitamin B12 and folate in methylcobalamin form.
Is it harmful for people who have MTHFR to be unknowingly taking vitamins that haven't gone through the methylation process? Or is it just like it is what it would be if you were to eat food, your body just isn't absorbing it like it should or processing it like it should?
Not necessarily for B12, but for folate. If you're having folic acid, which so many prenatal vitamins have folic acid, so many foods that are fortified have folic acid. So we don't even realize it. We don't even really know what it is, right? So folic acid is synthetic. You want to make sure you have folate in methylcobalamin form. So then you can absorb it. So yes, it can be hindering to your health if you have long-term folic acid and you have that SNP. Yeah.
I always remind people that if they don't know their MTHFR status, like it never hurts just to take the already broken down version, the whole versions of these vitamins, right? If you don't know, just switch. Right. It does no harm to switch to the natural form.
Exactly.
Yeah. And because there's definitely different with the allays that you're talking about with MTHFR, some people do a better version of breaking it down than others. Like for me, I'm homozygous 1298. So I still methylate at about a 60% process in my body. But for someone who is homozygous 677, they only methylate at a 20%, even probably less. Mm-hmm. So it really kind of depends sometimes even on the type of gene mutation you have with that, so it has to be all that gets really complex, but.
Exactly. And I find a lot of, I work with kids from like 17 to 25 who have really debilitating anxiety. And we give them a B vitamin, clean up their diet a little bit. And it's amazing. It's like the funnest thing to watch. It's just amazing.
And I never, ever heard about the correlation with autism even in this. That's so interesting. Mm-hmm. So interesting.
Yep. It is a factor. As far as the thyroid is concerned, there are 9 markers that I test for. So TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone, that tells us if your pituitary is creating the thyroid hormone, and then T4 and T3. Now, when we are looking at hormones, we look at free and total. Free means it's unbound. That's what's usable to us. And then total is the sum of what's unbound and what's bound to proteins. Very, very helpful for guidance. Then I look at reverse T3, which is when your body is taking from your T3 your available active thyroid hormone, because T3 is really the active thyroid hormone, and it's only 7% of the equation. T4 is our inactive thyroid hormone, and that's 93% of the equation. So we have to cleave off one atom of iodine, convert it into an active form. And that's the star of the show that tells me, are you losing weight? Are you having cold extremities? Are the hair thinning outside of the eyebrows go? Nails brittle? Some anxiety, depression, fatigue, constipation is a big one too. And fertility, right? We need a high level of T3 to become, to conceive. So I look at those numbers, and the reverse is when you're taking from that T3, and that usually happens from cortisol, our stress hormone, and it can also be related to inflammation. So I look at those factors, and then I look at T3 uptake, which gives me an indication of, is there a hormone dysregulation, right? When hormones are competing for that thyroid site, we're going to see if there's an imbalance of hormones, it's going to affect your thyroid. And then I look at antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibody and thyroglobulin antibody, to see if you are in the state of attack. To Teresa's point, there's so many people who come into my office, they don't feel well. They've been on Synthroid for 15, 25 years. And they say, I don't feel well. And we test them, and they have a raging Hashimoto's that they did not know about. And their Synthroid's not working. So it's really important to take a very thorough look and look at the root causes.
Makes a lot of sense. So for the root cause part of it, what causes someone to go into a state of Hashimoto's? What are some of those things that you can find that just gives us an answer of, how did this all get started in my body?
Right. So I wrote a list and put it in my book, Food Frame, because when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's years ago, I was looking like, well, how did I get this? And you look at the doctor and they're like, I don't know. And so I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, how do we not know? How do we reverse this? Like, I've got a fire in the basement. You're giving me a squirt gun. I need a fire hose, right? I need to call the fire department. Isn't anybody worried here? I was just one of the 50 million Americans that has an autoimmune disease. So I put together a list, and the top one, a third of it is genetics. So mom, dad, sister, brother, aunts, uncles, grandparents, they have autoimmune. You have a higher likelihood of having that. Number 2 is leaky gut. So intestinal permeability, that is a huge contributing factor to autoimmunity. And what happens is we only have one layer of epithelial cells in the lining of the intestines, and we have some villi there to protect that. And we have years of gluten and sugar and dairy and chemicals and toxins and stress and food particles and medication and all these things that start to rip little holes. They're called tight junctions in the intestinal lining. And then things go in through that back door, if you will, and they go into the bloodstream, and the body says, who are you? You're coming in the back door. You're the enemy. And it starts to create antibodies, right? And those, we get inflammation and food sensitivities typically, usually first. And then those antibodies are going to, need a place to park. So it's going to find a gland, a tissue, an organ to park itself. And, in my case, it parked itself in my thyroid. And I suspect that both of my grandmothers had Hashimoto's, but they were never tested. And I now know, because I've tested my mother since, that she has Hashimoto's. So it wasn't a great surprise, although I was the first one to kind of find it. Anyway, so it's just important to find those root causes of that. And then you can heal that leaky gut. I do a stool test with every single person I work with to determine if there's leaky gut and what pathogens are in the gut. There's some parasites that can be the trigger for Hashimoto's, but there's a lot of pathogens that can be the trigger for any autoimmune disease. So it's really important, again, to find that root cause. But leaky gut is a huge one. Vitamin D deficiency, MTHFR, and pathogens, as I mentioned. And then viruses, for instance, the Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus comes from the mononucleosis. It lays in the system if you've had mono, or you've swapped spit with somebody who has had mono, so you can share a cookie, a straw, a kiss, something. And so the statistics are 90% of the population has it by the time they're 40. It lays dormant until something happens. A lot of stress, bad diet, too much alcohol, not enough sleep, a real traumatic event. It can trigger it and activate it. So I look for that when I'm looking at white blood cells on a lab, and I look for that if there's a viral pattern or bacterial pattern, and it's very common. A lot of people have it. It was one of the things on my checklist. I went through all of these things, and I had my EBV was an active case. And so the EBV could lead to blood sugar dysregulation, thyroid dysregulation, and up to 33 autoimmune diseases. And the last one is a lot of mercury, heavy metals can trigger autoimmune disease.
Wow. So as you were learning all of this for your own health, a couple questions. Did you get overwhelmed? And where did you begin? Like, how did you start using, again, foods as medicine? Where did you begin?
So that's a great question. I wasn't overwhelmed, I think, at the beginning, because I didn't even know what I didn't even know. So I just thought there's some reason there's one single reason that I got autoimmune disease. And it was really before Google was sort of in existence. I hate to say that, but that's, it wasn't a thing. So I did as much research as I could possibly do. I mean, it was sort of at the beginning of that time. And I realized that gluten was a huge factor in autoimmunity. And gluten was a huge factor in leaky gut. And gluten was a huge factor in general disarray. Thyroid and gluten don't really get along. And I was never told to not eat gluten. So I realized that gluten was not my friend. Same thing pretty much with dairy. And soy and thyroid do not get along. And soy is, on the other hand, a whole other conversation about hormones in soy, but thyroid hormone for sure. And, it's an estrogen builder. It's got isoflavones that mimic estrogen, as you guys know. And so it just wasn't a health food, right? So I really reassessed, and I always ate really, really healthy. I mean, I've eaten salads my whole life, and I was vegan for a long time. And, I've always been very, very healthy and exercised. And so I took all those things out. And it was a slow progression. And then I found out, Epstein-Barr virus. So I tested myself. I had that. So I treated that. Oh, well, I've eaten tuna pretty much for lunch every day since I was 10. And so I tested myself for mercury. And it was like off the chart. It just kept going off the page. So I was like, ooh. So I decided to chelate, which took me about a year to chelate out of that mercury. And so each of these steps it took years. It really took me years to get to all of these things. I checked my vitamin D, and then I did a stool sample. I had, I did a lot of tears along the way. And I finally found, this is so long ago, but I was already probably practiced in my nutrition. And I found a doctor that was a functional medicine doctor. I went to him. I spent, I think, $5,000 that first day. And then I walked out of his office and I cried all the way home. I cried of relief that I finally found somebody that can help me. But in all actuality, it didn't really help any more than what I had been doing already. I was 100% compliant. 3 months later, we retested. The needle moved just a fraction. So I realized I stopped eating grains and legumes because I was vegan, and and thought that was the way to go, but it wasn't. And I did a stool test on my own and realized that I had all these things going on in my gut. Once I fixed that, and then I realized when I got the stool test, I went to a biological dentist and I brought the stool test with me. And the biological dentist saw it and said, that's a salivary bacteria. And 2 seconds later, I was having an MRI, and they found an abscess that was a remnant from when my wisdom teeth were removed 23 years prior. And it grew an abscess and it went into my jawbone. And I had no idea. I had zero symptoms. I had nothing. You wouldn't know. There was nothing. And so I had surgery with the biological dentist, and they took it out. They found a piece of metal in there as well that they must have left from when they took my wisdom teeth out. And after that, all my labs went completely normal, and I was on the path to healing. So yeah, that's why I do the stool test for everybody I work with, because it's a really big indicator of what is going on, right?
That's insane. That is crazy.
Right.
And that whole salivary bacteria, like, are you now aware enough? I assume you are, Risa, that like which ones are, so that you would refer people back to a biological dentist if you see the same things. Yeah. Because if you don't have any symptoms, like, how would you even know? And it's kind of freaky to think about those things.
Right.
I often think about how we are a host to a cajillion bacteria, obviously. And a lot of them work in harmony with our bodies. Exactly. And there are a lot that don't. And it's so hard sometimes to know even how to create the balance, to make sure you don't kill off the good, and you got to take care of the bad sometimes, but that can take a lot of work. So that's amazing. I just kudos to you for just your perseverance through all that. And what excites me about kind of where we're at, because I in the same place as you, Risa, I didn't have Google when I was probably even going through my early stages of school as a nurse practitioner. But I am proud of my patients for being their own detective. I am never offended by my patients knowing something more or knowing more about a topic than I do. In fact, I am grateful to my patients for every new piece of knowledge that they bring into me, because it only makes me a better practitioner. And so all of you listening, I'm just saying, I know we say things that like, don't listen to Dr. Google, but the fact of the matter is Dr. Google have all the research there. It's there. You do have to know where to look, but it is a wealth of information, and you can do it in a way that's healthy without, kind of getting too kind of down in the weeds, you could say. But I'm just proud of my patients for being their own advocate in that way.
Yep, me too. I love it when that happens. I'm like, oh, you taught me something new. I love that.
That's incredible. And that takes a lot of humility, ladies. So I am not a medical provider. I'm a community health professional. But that is very wonderful because not all providers have that same frame of mind,
Right.
but when worse than not feeling quote unquote safe with your provider or feeling that mutual trust is there. I mean, it's our body, just like Risa, you're saying there's the story you went through and all that you found. I mean, that's a big part of your life and your story. And you wrote a book for the masses to help women, and men and with their health. And it's incredible. Yeah. Something I was thinking as you were talking about, how the gluten and the thyroid don't get along, and soy and dairy, and how that impacts our intestinal lining and all of this. I mean, sometimes I think with women, especially women who are very strong type A, I've noticed, or who have high need for control, who, they're exercising all the time, they're being healthy and well. And now, they will cut out everything you tell them. But then what happens is they're not nourishing their body enough. They're not taking in enough calories or fats or healthy proteins or, what kind of recommendation do you give to women who really are very motivated to take care of their health, who won't be eating the glutens, let's say, because of an autoimmune condition? What are some good tips that you can give them to nourish their body well?
I'm a big fan of protein, fat, and fiber. I say this to everybody I work with. Protein, fat, and fiber. That's our fuel. Anything aside from protein, fat, and fiber, I mean, we need carbs, right? And you're going to get carbs with your fiber. That's where your carbs should come from, right? We need fat. We need fat for the brain. We need fat for protein. We just need it for everything. And protein is a big factor. We don't need too much protein, but we need enough of good quality protein. And, yes, you can get protein from plant sources. You can get protein from vegetables. There is, protein in vegetables, but we are on such a high carb diet and highly processed diet. And I literally want to cry. I was in a new market to me a couple of weeks ago. I was traveling and we went into this market, and it was like a Costco market. And there were just aisles and aisles and aisles of just box of dead food everywhere. And it's fun. It's easy. It's convenient, but it is dead food. We cannot be feeding our bodies dead food. Really, if you go to Italy, the markets are tiny, because they just have the fresh produce of what came in that day. They have the meats and the fish of what came in that day, and the poultry, and then they have a lot of cheese, right? And they have some pasta too. But we should be eating real food, and we've veered so much off of that. One of the tips I would give people is, assess what you're eating. When you look at your food, is this from a farm or is it from a factory? So unfortunately in America, we eat so many factory foods, even health foods. These are gluten-free crackers. They're great. They're clean. I've looked at the ingredients, but they're still from a freaking factory, right? So, I go to the Natural Food Show every year and I'm like, these are all great. They're all better for you for sure, but they're still not from a farm. So we should be eating more unprocessed foods without labels for the most part. So, and we're always going to eat some sport eating is what I call it, right? We should be eating for survival, but we're always going to eat for sport. I mean, I'm going to, but I don't eat it every day and I don't eat it every week sometimes, but I don't want to live a life without chips and guac. I just don't. So I'm very selective of what kind I have and when I have it. I budget for that. So it's a balance.
So tell us about the food frame. That's the name of your book, right? It's titled The Food Frame. I was on your website. You have a kind of a way to actually take a quiz where women can figure out what type of diet is right for them. So give us a sense of the book, what's in it, how you have really laid this out for women and men to follow.
Yeah. So years and years of working with people in my practice, I just kind of put everybody on the same diet at the beginning, maybe veered a little bit. And then I realized, no, some people are thriving and some people are really not thriving, and they're not losing weight and they're not feeling better. And I realized that we should be eating for our health status. for our current health status. And all these books come out and, oh, we should take out lectins. Oh, we should eat like this. We should be eating only plants. We should be eating only protein, animal food, carnivore. I mean, it goes on and on, you see the books, they come out a few times a year, and then somebody does it and they go, oh my God, I feel amazing. And I lost, 35 pounds. And then you try it, you're like, I didn't lose any weight and I didn't feel that great. And so I realized that it is about our health status. So I created Food Frame, and those I highlight. I talk about detoxing because it's super, super important. And we should always be cleaning out the body. And then after detox, there's 6 different diet types that I commonly recommend. I veer off a little bit on occasion, but these are the main ones that I use. And they seem to really work for the masses. So one is paleo, right? That's how we sort of our Paleolithic times, our survival, our caveman diet, and that's protein, fat, fiber, essentially. And the goal of paleo is to decrease systemic inflammation and increase good gut health, which is my 2 foundational issues that I think either optimize health or hinder health. And then there's ketogenic, and that's when you switch your fuel source from carbohydrates to fat. So you're burning fat for fuel instead of carbohydrates. A little difficult to do. That's a great program that I would put somebody on if they were highly blood sugar dysregulated. So let's say they're diabetic or pre-diabetic, probably more diabetic, I would put somebody on. But there's a lot of qualifiers there. So you'd have to have a gallbladder, right? Or you would not be the person to do this if you didn't have a gallbladder. And having, I test people to see if their bile is sludgy and if they're able to process fats. And if they can, this would be, they'd be a good candidate for that. And then if they, didn't have blood sugar dysregulation, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Then there is AIP, which is autoimmune protocol. And that is anyone who has autoimmune disease or anyone who wants to do it. It would be great if they have autoimmune in the family or they're worried about getting autoimmune. It's a great, it's an elimination diet for 30 to 90 days. It is full focused on decreasing that systemic inflammation. That fire in the basement that I mentioned, it really helps to start to quell that fire. Very restrictive. So it isn't for everybody, but it really is very effective. I've seen people with Tourette's reverse that. I've seen a ton, really just incredible. I work with a lot of rheumatoid arthritis patients, and it's been extremely effective for that. And then we have low lectin. And low lectin is basically, lectins are what is under the umbrella of called anti-nutrients. And so they're lectins or phytates, and they are the body's or their plant's defense mechanism. We all have our defense mechanism. As humans, we can call 911, kick, scream, yell, flee a situation, but plants don't. So they have that protective coating called lectins. And so it's very hard to break them down. You know who you are, because if you were that person who can't eat garbanzo beans or any beans for that matter, you can't break them down, you're bloating, you're not able to break them down. So you have to have a very acidic environment to do that. And so low lectin is a great alternative. And that's something I usually recommend for people with after they get off AIP. It's a stair step. It's not as strict, and it's just as effective at quelling that inflammation. And then there's vegetarian, which I work with a lot with people who are have been raised with vegetarian, and they've been, whether it's religious reasons or it's just been their lifestyle. I don't think vegetarianism is right for everyone. I absolutely am a big proponent of plants, lots of plants every day, but not everybody can go without animal protein, in my opinion, but everybody is different. That's why I created Food Frame, is everybody is different. It's not about one book and one idea and one concept for everyone. We're all unique, and it changes, right? When our health status changes, I don't have Hashimoto's anymore, so I don't have to eat AIP. Am I going to, go and eat the standard American diet? Not even close to a chance of that. But, I don't want to put myself in an inflamed state, but, I don't have to be as strict, because when your health changes, when you're not diabetic anymore, you don't have to do keto, things like that. Mm-hmm. So did I name all? Oh, and low FODMAP. Low FODMAP is an acronym FODMAP is an acronym for fermented oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And in plain English, that means these are certain kind of carbohydrates that we can eat that will cause a lot of absorption of water and methane gas production. So that is very useful. I use this quite a bit for people with SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, anybody with IBS or IBD, irritable bowel disease or syndrome. I work with low FODMAP. It's very, very effective. Again, a bit restrictive, but it's an elimination 30 to 90 days. And we see amazing results with that.
This is incredible, Risa. How much information you have gained through this process is incredible, because I really love that you are acknowledging, that every body is different. And not only is every body different, but our seasons of life change, And so I think that's so important. Did you say in this book, there's an assessment that you can take to kind of understand where to begin?
Yeah. On my website, you can take the quiz. It's only 12 questions. And it really is effective at determining which is your best food frame.
I love this. I'm really pumped to read this for myself, because I know for me personally, so I ran track in college and always very aware of healthy eating, exercise, right? But then as you move on with life, and maybe again, some of our listeners can relate, maybe active and mindful, right? But then life gets kind of busy, change with our family and friends. I mean, food is fuel. And when we're not getting the right fuel, we don't feel good. And so I just know for me personally, my 2023 year, which is when we're taping this episode, really my goal, I've kind of put it on the back burner for so long. And what I've learned, Risa, is it's actually fun. Like, it's not a huge hassle. Eating well and eating plants, like, it can be tasty and not gross. So what is one of your favorite recipes or things that you love to eat that taste so good and it's so good for you?
Yeah, I love to cook. I don't have a lot of time because I work a lot and I travel quite a bit. But I love to eat good food. I am a foodie. So, some people think, oh, you eat healthy, you're not really a foodie. I'm like, no, I'm a foodie. Like, I love food, but I don't want to waste a meal on something bad. So yeah, it's hard to say what my favorite is because there's so many things. I'm a huge zucchini pasta person. I make, zoodles and with different sauces. I'm a huge shake person. I'm a big believer in collagen because collagen is that grout that heals that leaky gut. So I've been having a shake a day for, I don't even know how long, 20, 25 years. And I love my cherry amaretto shake is so good. During the holidays, I was making chocolate mint shakes, a little peppermint extract with my chocolate collagen. So I love that. There's nothing that beats a fresh salad, like just good, different fresh salads. And I love to make dressings. So in the summer, I'll make a raspberry vinaigrette. I'm a huge fan of my sesame ginger dressing, which is super easy. It's 4 ingredients. I make it all the time and stick it in the fridge. And then I put on everything. I do a lot of turkey burgers. I do a lot of soups. And those, I cook a lot, but I do a lot of stir fry. I love miracle noodles. Do you guys know about miracle noodles? So miracle noodles are made from konjac flour. It's yam noodles basically. And there's 1 net carb in the whole package.
What?
Yeah. You have to season them. So I do a stir fry with my sesame ginger dressing. With tons of veggies and, some kind of protein, and top it off with some black and white sesame seeds, which are really high in calcium. So I do that a lot.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about collagen? Because I feel like a lot of my patients ask me, should I be taking collagen? And I kind of say, well, then this is true. There's certain nutrients that I think are really helpful to take, but there's some where I'm like, I'm not quite sure for every person, right? But I'm like, well, if you take collagen and it, you notice a difference, you feel better, your skin feels better, your joints feel better, then it obviously is doing something good for you. So continue it. But tell us about is there certain types of collagen that you are better than others? Really, what is your kind of general spiel to people about collagen?
So collagen is basically comprised of 3 major amino acids that are extracted from bones when they're cooked for a long time. So these, there's about 5, but there's 3 major amino acids create collagen. And collagen is very sticky and gelatinous sort of at room temperature, right? And so what it does is, I call it grout for leaky gut. It goes through the intestinal lining and it starts to heal the intestinal lining. As you mentioned, it's great for any connective tissue. So anybody who I have with rheumatoid arthritis, I highly recommend it. It's great for hair, skin, and nails. That's the silver lining, and then cellulite as well. But it's really good for immunity. It's really good for muscle building. It's a very absorbable form of protein versus like a plant-based protein that would be like brown rice or pea protein is very, very common. And if you have any IBS or any low FODMAP, that is going to bloat you to no end. So that is not a one size fits all. Collagen is very much a broad spectrum, one size fits all. Not, I never say everybody all the time because, I've had one patient who was allergic, we found out, to collagen. She was having antibodies to collagen. So for her, it wasn't the right fit. But for huge, broad brushstroke, yes, it is great for pretty much everyone, kids, babies, adults, seniors for sure. And it does create the elasticity in the skin. It helps that. That's why we wrinkle, because we are losing that elasticity, that collagen in our skin. Vitamin C helps with that absorption as well. So I stick a little vitamin C in my shake as well. But I am a huge fan of collagen. Now, there are different brands and there are different cleanliness, right? There's different degrees of clean on as far as collagen is concerned. There's one brand I won't name that had a great product sold to a huge corporation. And now I'm starting to see some things in there that weren't there to begin with. So, very happens all the time. Is toothpaste is a huge one that I always say, look at your ingredients. I was just brushing a few weeks ago and I'm like, what? They put carrageenan in here? Like, when did this happen? Mm-hmm. So, it just makes me so upset that we have to look at the ingredients in our toothpaste, but we do. Yeah. We have to look at our ingredients in everything. Our supplements, a lot of supplements. There is one brand that's it's sold everywhere, Costco and CVS, everywhere. And they put vegetable oil and soybean oil in their vitamin D. You're like, what? And then I had one that came in my office a few months ago for macular degeneration, and it had 3 dyes, 3, blue, yellow, and red. And then it had, I can't remember, but I think it was corn oil. And then, it was just like vitamin A and vitamin C and one other vitamin. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And dyes in our supplements, it happens. Oh. So we have to look at the ingredients and everything we put in and on our body, because we're highly toxic, 86,000 chemicals the FDA has just recently approved, and 86,000 and 2,000 are approved pretty much every year, regardless of who's in the White House. So we are very toxic. It's everywhere. It's our perfumes, it's our paint, it's our clothes, it's everywhere. So and it's our food. It's huge. So we have to be very diligent about that. So back to your question, Teresa, is look at the ingredients. There's different types of collagen, type 1, type 2, type 3. They are all pretty effective. They have little nuances that are a little bit unique, but collagen is a very effective and absorbable protein. I am not a big fan of whey protein in the least bit. After all the years of allergy testing, I have done food allergy testing. Whey comes up almost all the time. And it's highly processed. It's not good for you. So, so it's really the best source that I know. I've been doing collagen for years and I love it. I have new hair growth all the time. People are always saying,
beautiful hair. Okay. Our listeners don't see what we see, Risa, but I literally think you look like Paula Abdul when she was like 30 or something. You look like, people tell you look like Paula Abdul.
I used to do double work for her back in the day. Yeah.
No. What? Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. I want to find my phone so I can take a screenshot of all three of us. Well, it's fine. We're recording it, so we can do that later. Risa, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, so our last questions. I know we kept you on a little longer, but this is a great interview and I took lots of notes. But Risa, typically we kind of wrap up our interview with this question, and then we'll love again to hear how people can learn more about you. But what do you wish every woman knew about her hormone genius?
Listen to your gut. If you feel something is not right, something is not right. Mm-hmm. And just piggybacking on that is we are so used to going to the doctor. We have these complaints. They give us synthetic hormones to modulate our hormones. And I would love every woman to take a pause and say, is this solving the root problem, or is this just kicking the can? Because they come into my office after they've kicked the can for years, and it's painful to start to get off those synthetic medications and then test and figure out. I mean, some women, I'm working with somebody right now, has chronic headaches every single day, and it's hormone related. So she finally said, I'm just done with all these, the IUDs and the pellets and I'm just, I've got to bite the bullet and get to the root cause. And for her example, I wish that everybody would, at the very beginning of that road, take a pause, talk to some people, do some research, and listen to your gut. If that's the way to go, then go that way. But if it isn't, then just make that decision educated, find the facts and listen to your gut and what works for you.
That's great advice because, nothing really is truly an emergency usually. So take some time. Right. Take some time to really talk to people, do research. I love that advice. So how can people learn about your book, Risa? How can they get a handle on kind of where you're at and even get involved in your program?
Yeah, so I work with people all over the country via Zoom, and they can find me on my website at Risa Groux Nutrition. It's RISAGROUX Nutrition. And you can find my book there. You can find my detox there. You can find all my products there, collagen bars. I have these yummy chocolate collagen bars. Anyway, everything you need to know. The quiz is on there, recipes, tons of recipes, and all 6 different diet types are there, and a boatload of information is there for people to grab. And social media is Risa Groux Nutrition. And I would love to offer your listeners 10% off my RGN detox. It's a wonderful detox for 14 days with collagen shakes and then food. It's not a starvation program. It's, about eating good food, good quality, and real food to help remove those toxins, bind and open up those pathways.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Risa, thank you so much for joining us today. I, again, learned so much. I know our listeners will love this. And definitely, I'm sure they're going to be fleeing to get your book. Again, I'm just so glad that there are women in this world who see that there are needs in the world, and we're working to fill and to meet, women where they're at and to serve women. Because again, you were right. Like, we have such a toxic culture in many ways, specifically with nutrition, and without education, we can't change. We don't know. So we just appreciate you for coming on and educating our listeners today.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for doing what you do, and you're making an impact. And it's great to know that we have an army out there that's helping people. It's fun to watch people heal.
Thanks, Risa.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel. So if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.